Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really sucking the ball. Knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering, they're cheering, and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really sucking the ball. Knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
Hi, everybody. This is the Baseball Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion, your host, the Hut, and here we are back again. It's been a while since I've done a live stream on this channel, and got big news here if you're a Met fan, and that is Keith Hernandez is finally getting his number retired. It's been 30 years. You think they should have done it 30 years ago, but they finally did. Now, please like this video and subscribe to the Baseball Hut, and also please leave comments in the chat and I'll read them. Very good that way. You don't have to send me a super chat. Oh, super chats are welcome. I do read everybody's comments, to be honest with you. Let me say hello to the chat. Hello, Eddie Wilkes. Hello, Leon. Hello, Greg. Hola, Nelson Cruz. Hello, Albert King. So they just announced this a little while ago. I was sort of waffling on whether to do a live stream tonight. I was going to do it tomorrow, but since this whole thing came down in the last like half hour, 45 minutes, I thought it might as well just do a live stream talking about the greatest first baseman in the history of the Mets, and that's Keith Hernandez. I'm going to go to his baseball reference page, and we'll go over some of the stuff with Keith. I have talked about the Mets retiring the numbers, excuse me, over the last year, and I felt that Keith should be the next guy to have their number retired. Um, and it was important. Hello, Robert Simeone. We'll talk about Major League Baseball. I have something on them. I have something about Valentine. But let's talk about Keith a little bit. Let me just open this up to you. And here we have Keith's uh, baseball reference page. Now, Keith obviously played a long time with the Cardinals. 10 years with the Cardinals, I think. Let me see. Yeah, 10 years with the Cardinals. And he was there's Gold Glover, MVP, won batting title, and won a World Series in 82. And in 83, Whitey Herzog, the manager, traded him to the Mets. The thought was that this thing that Keith had back then was, I guess, a drug problem, and Whitey just wanted to get rid of him, and he punished him by sending him to a bad team with the Mets. And Keith was not happy, from what I understand. He has said this in his over the years that he was not happy that the Mets were trading him, especially to the Mets. I mean, the Cardinals were trading him to the Mets, uh, just due to the fact that the Mets were bad for a long time. And he remembers Shea. Shea was empty. And I remember Shea back in those days, boy. There was nobody there. And I will say this, I might be the one YouTuber that actually remembers Keith playing. Most of the other YouTubers don't know Keith. They know Keith does the announcer. Uh, and I was thinking about this before we came on. He might be the best player that's not in the Hall of Fame right now. And he probably was a better player than probably Gil Hodges. He's got a higher WAR. He's got a higher wins above replacement. He's a greater defensive first baseman than Gil Hodges was. But the thing about Keith, he's the greatest first baseman ever defensively. Um, he's got the most Gold Gloves at first. He was a winning player. He taught the Mets how to win. He's really the first piece to the puzzle that the Mets had. Once they brought him in, everything changed. Um, so he was one of these guys that made the team better, made the Mets better. Now, they were pretty bad when he got there. They just called up Darryl Strawberry. Dwight Gooden hadn't gotten here yet. They had George Forster on this team, but obviously Forster showed that he wasn't really a main piece. He was a complementary piece. Mookie was here. Ubi Brooks was here. Ubi seemed to get better when Keith was here. Um, and the pitching staff, he had Tom Seaver there, but unfortunately the Mets lost Tom in that stupid draft that off season. They had Darling here already. They'd made the trade for Sid Fernandez. Um, he wasn't here yet. So the pieces were there with the Mets. And Lenny, obviously. And they had to make some moves. They had to make some trades. They brought in Howard Johnson. They brought in Gary Carter, who was the final piece. And of course, Doc Gooden was the other big piece uh, over the 83 and 84. You know, the three big pieces those 2 years was Keith, Darryl, and Dwight Gooden. And Keith wasn't happy. He cried, they said, in the shower. He said that. He wanted to retire. The rumor was that he was going to get traded to Houston. That's what the big rumor was, that he was going to go to Houston. Now, The Mets wanted to re-sign him because he had one more year left on his contract. So that offseason, Frank Cashin said to him, I'll trade you to another team, but we want you to be here because we're going to turn this around. Um, the two biggest people in Keith's life that influenced him to stay one was Rusty Staub and his father, Juan Hernandez, I think is his name. And his father told him, like, look, I've seen some of these players that the Mets have in the minor leagues. You don't want to go anywhere. You want to stay here. And it seemed like with Keith, his whole career kind of turned around because it didn't look good after this whole scandal that he was involved in. And this sort of gave him a revival. He said it gave him a revival. But you look at some of Keith's numbers. We'll go through them a little bit, just over his overall career, and then we'll go through his Mets stuff. All right. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times scored 90 runs or more. That's pretty good for his era. Let's see. Had 200 hits one year. Led the league in doubles one year. 1, 2. He had a lot of doubles with the Mets. Was that it? Like I said, wasn't a big home run hitter. Because Keith was a guy that, he was a Cardinal. So he hit the ball everywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times of 90 runs or more. Runs batted in or more. So that's the thing that hurts Keith. The two things that hurt Keith are his home run totals and his RBI totals. And really, the last 3 years killed Keith's batting average. Because Keith, if you saw him, he was a 300 hitter. He wasn't a guy that he was a tough out. He's tough out late in the game. He walked like crazy. Let's look at his walks. It's so exciting, isn't it? Let's look at his walks. He led the league in walks in 1986. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. 3 times of 90 walks per year. He had 380 for on base percentage. And like I said, the last 3 years of Keith's career really killed a lot of his statistics. As prior to that, he was a 300 hitter, had a high on base percentage. By 89, Keith was shot, and he should have retired after 89. He shouldn't have went to Cleveland. He should have been retired as a Met, and that was it. He had nothing left. But let's go do a little bit here. So in 79, 417, 408, 401. It's pretty good, 3 years. Then in 83, it was 396, 397, 82, 409, and 84. And he didn't have a good year in 85. He had a good second half, good late August and September. 413 on base in 86. And then it sort of lagged off after that. Really, 86 was really last great year. He's the all-time, believe it or not, game-winning RBI leader. I think he's 125 or something like that. Something crazy. He's the all-time on a useless ancient, quirk, statistic, trivia thing. Keith has it, and that's the game-winning RBI. He walked more than he struck out. You don't see that every day anymore. But the batting average hurts Keith. He was 300 hit every storm. It's a lot like Mickey Mantle in that way. Because Mickey finished at 298. And also obviously the home runs and the runs batted in. But Keith was more of a 2-hitter, I guess, with the Cardinals. Then he became a 3-hitter. But he didn't have like these big, this is the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. You're not talking about these big offenses now where guys get on. I don't know what kind of player Keith would be today. I don't know how he would fit in. He would probably be a sort of an odd kind of player because of the lack of power that some of these players have. I mean, most first base, and even for his era, most first basemen hit 25 home runs. Now, if you look at Keith's overall, his overall sort of impact on the game, he had a higher impact than several Hall of Famers. Gil Hodges, Tony Perez, Orlando Cepeda, just based on his defense. Based on his defense, he is a superior player plus the offense. He wasn't an automatic out. He was a number three hitter on two championship teams. One that's one of the great teams of the last 40, 50 years in the 86 Mets. So this is a guy that has a long, a very interesting resume. And he's had two big hits and two game sevens in a deciding situation. Let me get to his postseason. Some of these numbers are not great, but there are some numbers here that are excellent. Um, 82, he won against the Braves, hit 333. That wasn't a very good team, the Braves they went up against. But 259 in the World Series. He had a big hit in that game seven. Uh, and game six against the Red Sox, game seven against the Red Sox, he had a big hit in the seventh inning, or the sixth inning. The sixth inning? Sixth inning against Bruce Hurst, big hit. He had an okay series in '88 against the Dodgers, but he passed his prime. He did not look good in that series at all. Keith was a very interesting postseason guy because his numbers are okay, but he had two really big hits, and they really put his teams in good position. So I mean, he was an excellent player. Um, like I said, he's in my view he's a Hall of Famer because I saw the guy play. This is not like Gil Hodges. I'm going based on reputation. But Keith, I saw Keith. I think some people in this chat have seen Keith. I've seen Keith, and he was a excellent player. And he was when he played, everybody thought he was going in the Hall of Fame. I'm surprised he didn't get more votes, but I think those power numbers hurt him. Now, what's going to happen now is, in another 5 years, the old players are going to go up for vote again, and hopefully he gets a chance to get in. He should get in, just based on some of these numbers. Let me just go through his Met numbers a little bit. All right. So with the Mets, he was a 297 hitter. Like I said, not a lot of power, but his intangibles as a leader, his ability to control the what was going on in the field. He had a great arm. He was a smart player. He might have been the smartest player that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of players over the last how many years. He's probably the smartest player that I've seen play. Was always in a position to do well, and really, what a awesome player to watch. Awesome. I don't know, throwing that word out there. I saw this news today and tonight. Very excited. Let me read you a couple things from the Mets themselves because they announced this. And I'm going to change the thumbnail on this video. This I kind of took from SNY. Let me just see. Let me read you a tweet from Mike Piazza. Really appreciate Steve Cohen and the Mets' commitment to our history and legacy, and of course, all Mets fans and your love for this team. Obviously, Keith will be sitting next to Piazza and Jerry Kuzman and Tom Seaver. He'll be the fourth Met to get his number retired. So let me read you what this announcement that the Mets put out just a little while ago. I'll just read this on the side for you. Mets put out a press release. Mets to retire Keith Hernandez's uniform number 17. The New York Mets today announced the team will retire Keith's number prior to the Saturday, July 9th game versus the Miami Marlins. Hernandez was elected to the Mets Hall of Fame in 1997, ranked second in team history in batting average, and earned 6 Gold Gloves with the Mets, the most in franchise history. Keith will become the fourth player to have his number retired by the Mets, joining Jerry Kuzman. In addition, the Mets have retired number 14 for manager Gil Hodges and manager Casey Stengel at 42 across baseball for Jackie Robinson, obviously, and Tom Seaver, Mike Piazza, and Jerry Kuzman. Quote, I'm thrilled, said Keith, who has spent nearly 3 decades with the Mets as a player and broadcaster, almost 40 years. This is truly a special honor and lasts beyond a lifetime. I can't thank Stephen Alspone and the Mets Hall of Fame. You know Keith is going to cry at this thing. He's going to cry. I was very emotional when Steve called to let me know about the number retirement. This hopefully we'll see Keith in interviews tomorrow. This is the highest honor an organization can bestow upon a player. I also want to thank Mets fans who have treated me like family since I arrived in 1983. Quote, Keith was the first captain in team history and a great leader and catalyst on that 86 championship team. He was a defensive wizard at first and was a clutch performer late in games. We made a promise to continue celebrating and honoring our tremendous history, and this is another deserving step in that direction. Congratulations, Keith. I'm going to go through some other numbers that should be retired going forward. But this was the first one. I'm very happy about this because I talked a lot about this last offseason. Hernandez led the National League in fielding percentage at 85 and 86 for the Mets, won 11 Gold Gloves overall, and is a member of the Rawlings Gold Glove Hall of Fame. He's a Hall of Famer, in my view. Now, please like this video if you haven't already and subscribe. And if you want to participate in the chat, all you got to do is subscribe and have to wait like 5 minutes. Keith was named to 5 All-Star teams during his career and ranks 4th in club history and on-base percentage and 10th in RBIs. On May 6, 1987, his teammates elected him the first captain in Mets history. The Bay Area native /310, blah, blah, blah. He delivered 3 RBIs in Game 7 of the 1986 World Series. Keith was acquired by the Mets on June 15th, 1983, from St. Louis in exchange for pitchers Neil Allen and Rick Omby. On June 14th, 1987, he spit on 2 fans that called him a pretty boy in the parking lot. Allegedly. He has been in the Mets television booth. Has been in the television booth since 1999, including the last 16 years on SNY. I hate Keith Hernandez. Why do you hate him? He spit on us. Where he's won 3 Emmy Awards for Best Sports Analyst. Now, I'll point out also he's probably in the most famous episode of Seinfeld. And I would assume that Jerry Seinfeld will be at this ceremony next year on July 9th. I'm making myself yuck because I wasn't thinking about doing something like that. But really, he spit on a couple fans, on a TV show. So this is great news. It's great news. It is. I don't understand why the Wilpons never retired his number all these years. I mean, that number should have been put out of circulation the minute that he left the Mets. Same thing with number 8. But let me read you sort of some players that have worn this number since Keith left the Mets. These names are there's some really great players on here, and then there's some real losers. All right, let me go through some really great players. The first these and the Mets have not worn this number. No Met has worn this number since 2010. Let's go. David Cone. Because he wore that number because Keith got, I guess, retired and he wasn't with the Mets anymore. Jeff McKnight. Jeff McKnight. That was in 93. Brett Saberhagen. Who, what a mixed bag. What a weird guy here. Boy. Brent Maine. Brent Maine. Of all people. Luis Lopez. Remember Louis, the backup infielder the Mets had from 97 to 99? Mike Bordick. Which that trade turned out to be a disaster because the Mets traded Melvin Mora. Kevin Apier. A guy who got traded in a bad trade for Mo Vaughn. This is a name out of the past. Satoru Komoyama. I vaguely remember him. The Aussie down under, Graham Lloyd. Wilson Delgado. Dai Sung Koo. We've seen him. And that clip with Randy Johnson. Jose Lima time. What a bunch of losers. And he's the biggest loser, one of the biggest losers of all that wore this number. David Newhan. Remember him in 2007? This is a guy who never got a big hit with the Mets. That's a pinch hitter. And Fernando Tatis Sr. Fernando Tatis Sr. also wore the number 17. Amazingly enough. But, it's surprising that the Mets took so long to do this. And not so much on the Cohen family. They've been doing a great job. It's been the Wilpons. Obviously the Wilpons are the ones that didn't want to retire anybody's number. And like I said, it's been very difficult to figure. It was very difficult figuring them out at times because they never did the right thing. Never ever ever did the right thing with the Mets or the Met fans. To be honest with you, but the Cohen family have done the right thing here. They did this thing with Keith, and can't be any happier. And that's that. You know. Now, other numbers. Now, last year I was hell bent to get Keith's number retired, and I'm so happy that they've done this. Now, who is next? Who is next on this now? Who do you think is going to be next? I'll ask the chat. I'll tell you who's going to be next. I would think, and I think it makes the most sense. Is Gary Carter. Gary should be next after this. Obviously, he's passed away. Now, his number should have been retired when he made the Hall of Fame. Why the Mets did not retire his number when he made the Hall of Fame in 2003 is beyond me to tell. You honored the guy several times. Wouldn't they retire his number? They should have retired his number before they closed Shea, and they didn't do that. To me, that is really the next number that needs to be retired. Mets have to retire number 8 and have him up in the rafters. I don't like him in the rafters. I like him on the field, what they used to have him, these numbers, or on the side where you could see him more prominently. You got to look up when you go to Citi Field, but I know some places do that. But number 8 should be next, and then after that, and you could do this next year with Gary, and you can have the family come in here. His son and his son looks just like him. His son looks just like him, and sounds like him too. That is what you could do. You can have him come in here and do a little speech for his father. That would be great. And after that, you can wait on the next number, I would think, and that's David Wright's number. David should be the next one after Gary Carter. To be honest with you, that should be the next number. Is Gary? I mean, is David? And he's been gone now for a long enough time that you can retire the number, I would think. Nobody's going to wear that number. Everybody knows that number is definitely getting retired. There's no doubt in my mind on that one. No one's ever wearing that number. And the thing about David is just he's probably getting in the Hall of Fame until the Mets open Citi Field. And then it got in his head that he couldn't hit there, and then the results showed it. And then he got hit in the head by Matt Cain, and his career was never the same after that. And by the way, Keith always said that his career was never the same after that. And I guess after that, now what's after that? That is kind of tricky. Because Gary and David are the most obvious ones. And then there's some that are kind of sort of murky. Number 15, Carlos Beltran. Now, Beltran's going to be up for the Hall of Fame, I guess, in 2 years, I think. Is it next year or the year after? So, and I think, Carlos Beltran's a Hall of Famer. And I think he'll probably go in as a Met. And the one thing that happened is the Mets had a lot of plans for him and that number. That is a question mark. Then we have uh, number 24, which is Willie Mays' number. There's been a few people worn it. Robinson knows wearing it now. Um, Ricky Henderson wore it. Kelvin Torvey, Kelvin Torvey, he wore it. The Hall of Famer. But that number should have been retired 50 years ago. You know, I don't know what the Mets have been waiting to do about this particular number. Why they haven't retired it? They should have retired it, considering how important Willie Mays was to New York City and to the history of baseball. And it's probably going to be probably post mortem on him. They'll probably do it after. They should have did this when Willie was still, able to get around. And now the next number, and this will be years from now, and we don't know how the career is going to work out, and that's what Jacob deGrom. I don't know what's going to happen with Jake. I know that Zips put out a projection. They said he was only going to pitch 130 innings. That's not going to cut it. The Mets aren't going to win it if he's going to pitch 130 innings. He's got to pitch close to 180 innings, 190 innings. And the Mets are going to win this division, or at least have any kind of chance. If he pitches 130 innings, that's not much more than what he pitched last year. That's just not going to cut it. Hello, Richard. Hello, Todd. Now, please like this video if you haven't already. Yeah, but, so that would be really down the line. Now, I was also going through some names, which is, I did it very quickly. Some names of Mets that should be honored with a sort of a day for them, which is what they kind of did a few years ago with Fonzie, John Matlack. That was last year, and Ron Darling. They did that last year. Guys they could probably honor. In the future. I'll give you a couple of names. Howard Johnson. And this list is not as nearly as important to me as these guys get in the Mets Hall of Fame. The numbers is to me is a bigger deal to me. And I got another thing I wanted, and that was Keith's number retired. But we have Howard Johnson. I'll put him in here. Terry Collins, because he got the Mets to the World Series. Maybe you don't put Terry in. They didn't win a World Series. That's the only thing. I put a question mark there. Al Leiter, who should be honored. And he's in the Met front office, supposedly. Sid Fernandez. Lee Mazzilli. Also put Jesse Orosco there because he threw out the last pitch. And you can connect him to Jerry Koosman because he was traded for Jerry Koosman. Interestingly enough, maybe Bobby Ojeda, maybe. I could put Bobby in. I'm a big Bobby Ojeda fan. I was when he pitched. And what's interesting about this year, they retiring Keith's number is the Mets' 60th anniversary. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So this was interesting for me. I know it was interesting for too many Met fans on YouTube, but it was interesting for your host. Because this is the kind of stuff I talked about last year. Like I said, not to sound like a broken record, but a great night, and hopefully the Mets will continue to sort of honor their past. And I'm so happy. This is a great night. And hopefully I'm sure Keith is going to go on his little tour over the next couple of days. From Richard, on Gary Carter's Hall of Fame plaque, they had him wearing a Expo hat, but would have been nice wearing a Mets hat after winning the 86 World Series. This is the thing about Gary with the Expos. Gary's the greatest Montreal Expo that ever played. He had great years with the Expos. He was there 10 years. With the Mets, he had 2 great years with the Mets, and then he started aging. He was still a superstar in 85 and 86. 87, he was still a superstar, but he was dealing with so many injuries to his knees, constantly getting hurt on the field, that was really hurting his production. and obviously 88. He basically, I've never seen a player lose their power in the middle of a season. The guy hit 8 home runs in the first 6 weeks of the season and didn't hit any until August. I mean, this was a guy that was a feared power hitter, a feared hitter. And in 88, it was all gone. All the power was gone. Richard says Alfonso. Well, Alfonso was honored last year. Carlos Delgado will not be honored. I don't see that happening. Mets didn't win a World Series. He wasn't like the most cheery guy here, uh, Carlos Delgado. But I've never seen a player lose all their power in a season. Usually you see players, they'll come back after a great season and have nothing the next year. We saw that with Howard Johnson. He had a great year in 91. He won the home run title and the RBI title and then was done in 92. But to see a player in season lose all their power, it was unbelievable to watch it. It was very frustrating to watch. Gary's hitting like clutch home runs in 80, 88 and winning games and stuff with the home run. And then from the middle of May to August, nothing. He had 8 home runs and then he hit three after that. And he was basically done as a threat, as a power hitter. Still a great catcher, but Nelson Cruz says Gary played when it was legal to bowl catchers over. That's right. And one tough player, really tough player. But at the end of the live stream, I'm gonna read you this list that WFAN put out. I'm not too keen on the list here that they have of greatest Mets of all time, but let's move on to some other things. Well, about the Mets currently, and obviously with the lockout, there's not a lot going on, but there might be some movement with the lockout now. There's going to be a meeting between Major League Baseball and the players. I'm going to read you part of this article from the other day, or really today. MLB and MLB Players Association set for Thursday bargaining session. Major League Baseball and the Players Association will hold a bargaining session on Thursday, returning to the table in an effort to work toward a new collective bargaining agreement. MLB is expected to make a new proposal regarding some core economic competitive issues at the meeting to address players' concerns. The first since the lockout began on December 2nd. So this is good news. Probably what you'll see, they'll have this little meeting and they probably won't talk for a while. And then when we get closer to, spring training, they'll be talking about stuff. The two sides have met on other issues in the week since the lockout, but they've not discussed any core economic issues during that time. When they start talking about the money, especially the first go-round, it's basically about, just getting through this stuff. It's just the beginning. During the final meeting on December 1st, the owners made a proposal that the union rejected, paving the way for the lockout to begin just hours later. The league has been working on proposals to create a path for a deal, a source said. One likely built upon some of the concessions that have already been on the table. Among those are a lottery draft lottery that will help disincentivize tanking, the elimination of the qualifying offer system, the universal DH, and an increase in the minimum salary for younger players. The Players Association has been seeking more material gains, including changes to free agent Super 2 eligibility and revenue sharing. Now, the things that I find interesting obviously is the DH. They're going to institute a draft lottery to where I think they're going to have it with like it is in the NBA and the NHL and the NFL, where the top 10 worst teams will be put in a lottery. That way, you won't have a team wanting to lose all the games to get a number one pick. And getting rid of this qualifying offer nonsense, I don't understand it. And hopefully they. I haven't seen this, but I'd love to see where they can really trade some of these picks, so they can start moving some of these draft picks around. So maybe you trade for a player and you trade draft picks because they, you see this in the NBA, you see this in football. I'd love to see them do that in baseball. That would be a little bit of a different wrinkle. Um, I don't care what they come across, what kind of agreement's going to be. I just want to see these players play and to get everybody's YouTube channels rolling again. Because this is not exciting stuff talking about labor issues. Trent Productions. Next numbers to be retired from the Mets should be number 5 and number 7. 5, I agree with you. 7 is a tricky one because he didn't spend the whole career here. I'd have to think long and hard on that. That's going to be a while. That's going to be quite a while. But the DH is a big deal with me and obviously with all of us, because this really affects our teams directly. All this other stuff nobody cares about. But that would be exciting to get the DH, because I'm really tired of watching the pitcher hit, because most pitchers can't hit. And I don't want to watch any pitcher hit anymore ever again. If I never see a pitcher hit again, I would be a very happy guy. That I can tell you. Now, please like this video if you haven't already. Now, we're going to go and talk about this thing with, where was I? Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo changed agents. Now, I was thinking that the Mets were probably going to sign Brandon. But now, considering who his agent is, that's not happening. He's going to be gone. He's not going to be with the Mets after this year. Brandon's going to be gone. I can guarantee you that he's not staying with the Mets at all. Just based on the fact that it's Scott Boras, and he's going to push his player to take the most money and run. Now, the Mets should be smart. Don't offer him any kind of contract now. Let him play the season out and see what happens. And if they still had the qualifying offers, you offer him a qualifying offer. He's not going to take it. You get a draft pick. Simple as that. If he plays great, you sign him. From what I was watching earlier, it doesn't seem like the Mets want to give him over $100 million. And considering his sort of injury history, I wouldn't do that. He misses too many games. When he plays great, but he misses just too many damn games. From Trayman, I hope MLB expands the Mets to 14 teams. That way it's easier for the Mets to get in. And teams like the Mariners and Jays that finish, that's stupid. Why don't you just let everybody in, Trayman? Just let all 30 teams in. Why would you want to have half the teams in? That's silly. The system's fine. I wouldn't go crazy with that. That's fine with me. All right, now here we got a little news. Now I don't know who the Mets bench coach is going to be. It's not going to be a name. I was hoping it'd be Bobby Valentine. That would be great. Bobby's crazy. Or even David Wright. That's not happening either. This is from NewJersey.com. Ex-Mets manager Bobby Valentine could be returning to Queens, the report says. The 65-year-old Buck Showalter might not be the ranking old-timer in Queens. The New York Post reports the Mets are working on a deal with former manager Bobby Valentine. Bobby remains in the Mets' radar as a potential special assistant in the front office. The 71-year-old Valentine recently retired from Sacred Heart University, where I didn't realize he did. He retired from there, where he served as the athletic director for 8 years. I didn't realize that Bobby retired from there. Valentine, who managed the Rangers, Mets, and Red Sox, they don't mention Japan, has been largely removed from MLB since 2012. Last year, he lost a bid to become mayor of his hometown, Stanford. It's unclear, however, to what degree Valentine would want to be involved if he returns to baseball. Bobby's a great baseball guy. This gets me very, very excited because I really love Bobby. He's probably the smartest manager in the years I've been a Met fan. To be able to watch him on a regular basis. He's very smart. Never missed a beat. What a The Mets always play hard until the end of his time here. Um, great man, a great manager, very smart manager. It's too bad the Mets didn't win in 2000. That's a weird situation because the Mets went up against a team that a third of the team has been named in the old Mitchell report, meaning that they had third of the team was on steroids. You know, Valentine ran the Mets from '96 to 2002, leading the club to the 2000 World Series, which had lost to the Yankees in 5 games. Valentine's first job as skipper came with the Texas Rangers from '85 to '92. He was also a Met coach for a few years. He was the Met coach in '85. He was the third base coach, and he got hired like a month and a half into the season. And he worked for George W. Bush, of all people. He returned in 2012 for one disastrous season in the Boston Red Sox dugout. Oh God, he never should have went to the Boston. That was not the right place for him. He needed to go to a young team. He was going to a championship team that the following year they won a championship. You knew he was not going to get along with David Ortiz and Pedroia up there, especially since they won twice. And Bobby's going in there telling him what's what. That did not go over well. Hello, SBFM Baseball. And in June of 2013, Valentine, they don't even mention his time in Japan. He was in Japan twice. And between 2002 and 2012, he won a championship there. He's the only like Western manager, American manager to win a World Series in Japan. They love him in Japan. From Tremont, Sal Licata is doing the overnight WFAN. Who cares? Who cares at this point? You know. All right. Now, please like this video if you haven't already and subscribe. Like I said, I wasn't planning on doing a live stream tonight. I was going to have it tomorrow in the afternoon. I was going to do it. But I wanted to talk about Keith and really what's going on with the Mets. I'm going to show you. This will coincide with this list that I came across. This is over the last couple of days. WFM website, they came up with this the greatest players in New York Mets history. And I don't like this list. Don't like this list at all. The 9 greatest players in New York Mets history. Let's go through it. They mentioned Jose Reyes. He's not on the list. And on my list, I don't have Jose there either. As I have my own list here. Let's see. I'll read the beginning of it. The New York Mets signed infielder Jose Reyes out of the Dominican in '99 when he was just 16 years old. The signing turned out to be one of the great finds in the history of the Mets. Between 2003 and 2011, his first stint in Queens, you see the numbers here. Reyes led baseball and hits, stolen bases 3 times and triples on 4 occasions. The speed shortstop made 4 All-Star appearances and even won a batting title. It's the only Met to win a batting title. He returned to the Mets for the final 3 seasons of his career, but he was no longer the same player. Had the Mets re-signed Reyes after the 2011 season, he may very well have gone down as a franchise icon. They should have re-signed Jose or traded him. Instead, they let him walk, and then they freaking drafted Kevin Plawecki, one of the worst picks the Mets ever could have done. What a bad move that was. From Joseph. Let me see. What was the problem with Bobby Valentine in Boston? They hated the guy. I don't know what it is. I think part of it is the fact that Bobby's a know-it-all. Bobby knows it all. And like I said, before, he probably went in there. He's probably telling these guys how to win, and they didn't want to hear from Bobby. That team had won twice, so I think that was part of it. And plus, they probably just had a bad year. And he probably didn't help it. And then they fired him. It's but it's exciting if he gets back with the Mets. That I'll say that. All right. Here's the list. It starts off with Carlos Beltran. Now, Carlos on my list is a little bit lower than this. He's number 10 on this list. After turning in one of the great postseason runs in history as a member of the 2004 Houston Astros, the Mets brought in 5-2 outfield the Queens with a lucrative 7-year, $119 million deal. The two greatest free agent deals the Mets ever signed was Beltran and Mike Piazza. It turned out to be one of the great signings that the franchise has ever made. He won 3 Gold Gloves and made 5 All-Star appearances. Now, it says here the one thing you have to understand that's going to be difficult is him with this cheating scandal. But here's the thing. It wasn't a gambling situation. And I want you to keep an eye on this thing with the gamblers. Gambling is starting to get itself very much entrenched in baseball. Don't be surprised if we hear a scandal about some team tanking a game or two. You don't be shocked. Or a player's tanking a game. Just keep that in mind going forward. But they've been cheating going on in baseball for 150 years. I don't think this will really preclude Beltran from getting in. He'll probably go in as a Met. Now, here's Keith. Keith is on this list. He's number 8 on this list. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Keith is on this list at number 8. On my list, he's much, much harder. Here's Daryl. Daryl's number 7 on this list. This list is a joke. This person that wrote this puppet that wrote this, doesn't know what he's talking about. Number 6, Jerry Kuzma. That's the one guy on the list that I had him at number 6. Number 5, Jacob deGrom. Jacob is too high on this list, just based on the fact that he didn't win a World Series and his career is still going on. I can't have him on this list just yet. At least not this high. He's got to get back on the field. Number 4, Mike Piazza. He's a little bit high on this list as opposed to my list. Number 3, David Wright. David's too high on this list. Way too high on this list. I'll read you my list in a minute. Number 2, Doc Gooden. And they have him in the 93. The 93 uniform with the script underneath. And number 1, obviously, is Tom Seaver. That's the most obvious one. Now, here's my list. My list is pretty good. At number 10 is Carlos Beltran. The guy was named the all-time center fielder for the 2000s, I think. From 2000 to 2010, he's on that list. I think Sporting News put that list out. Number 9 on my list is Jacob deGrom. Now, I put Jacob there. He would be higher if the Mets could get him back on the field, and he pitches another 2-3 years. At this level, he's gonna be higher on the list, and the Mets have to win a World Series. A lot of these guys on this list, unless they're really great, have to win a World Series. Okay. Speaking of which, number 8, David Wright. David Wright is number 8, and he's that low because he did not win a World Series. And there are guys on this that were greater players than him. There's only one player on this list that didn't win a World Series, and he's a great all-time player. That's better than David. Number 7, Gary Carter, which isn't mentioned in this list. And I put him there because obviously the Mets won a World Series. He had a lot of big hits those years. He's not higher on the list is because he only did it really just 2 years. But he's high on the list because he's in the Hall of Fame. Mets won a World Series with him, and he's just a great player. And he was probably the most popular Met in those years with the Mets. So that's very important, too. Everybody loved Gary Carter, for the most part. Very few people didn't like Gary Carter. And if you didn't like Gary Carter, it's probably because he was was hit killing you, killing your team. Number 6, I mentioned this, Jerry Kuzman. The third Met to get their number retired. Um, the greatest lefty in Mets history. Um, big game pitcher, great pitcher. He might be one of these pitchers that is a great pitcher that did not go in the Hall of Fame. But he's not a Hall of Famer. He should have probably won the 76 Cy Young Award. You look at his numbers, they're better than Randy Jones. Number 5. Number 5, Mike Piazza. And the reason Piazza is kind of low in this is because he didn't win a World Series. That's very important to me. But he's the greatest hitting catcher of all time. Hall of Famer. Turned the franchise around when he got here. But he didn't win a World Series. If he won a World Series, he'd be much higher on this list. Number 4, Darryl Strawberry. Now, on this list, he's high. He's low on this list. He's number 7 on this list. You know, the 1983 Rookie of the Year. Came in second in the MVP voting in 88. From 87 to 90, he was probably the most dominant player in the game. Scary good. This guy had more talent than most players of today. But unfortunately, with Darryl had a lot of personal problems. The one thing I was surprised about when watching that documentary about the 86 team in the summer was how troubled Darryl was before he even got to the Mets. So it wasn't a situation where Darryl was a problem when he got to New York. He was kind of a problem before he got here. That Darryl was having all kinds of issues at home. And really there was a lot of problems there. That really has traveled his whole life. Up until the last few years when he has found God. And he preaches with his wife. So you talk about a guy that unfulfilled talent. As great as he was, he could have been a really great player. But because of the personal problems he had with, obviously, with his father. So when he got here, there was a lot of drug issues, a lot of drinking issues. And what a shame. What a real shame for him. Number 3 on my list. Speaking of problems, number 3 on my list is Dwight Good. Now, the 84 Rookie of the Year, the 85 Cy Young Award winner, won the Triple Crown in pitching. Could have won 20 games a few other times in his career. Could have won 20 games in 86. But he said he had done a lot of cocaine that year. He was high a lot of times. That probably precluded him from winning 20 games. In 1987, because he missed the first 2 months, he could have won 20 games that year. Only won 15 games and missed the first 2 months. 88 won 18 games and had a chance to win 20, but he lost the last 2. He did not win the last 2 games that he pitched that season. He could have won 20 games several times. And in 1990, won 19 games and didn't win 20. So as great as those 2 years were, he could have won 20 games, 85, 86, 87, 88, and 90. He could have done it 5 times. This is how great of a talent he was. Now, his drug problem is a little different than Darryl's because he came from a good family. That's why the Mets weren't concerned by him, because they felt that he had a good family. He had a good upbringing. He was close with his father. He was close with his mother. But there was a lot of jealousy, I guess, back home and in Tampa. to where in 86, 85, going into 86, he was in a drug den, I guess, with his cousin and started doing drugs. He said the second he took it, he was hooked. Now Doc has had problems, really, uh, his whole life. Even to this day, he's had problems, and he's probably gonna be battling this for the rest of his life. Now we get the number, but he deserves to be number 3 on on my list because he really was a phenom, and people couldn't take their eyes off of Doc. One of my favorite Mets of all time, that's for sure. Now we have number 2 on my list, and that's Keith. And I mentioned Keith earlier, and his live stream is dedicated towards Keith, and his number being retired. The Mets announced that his number is retired. The Mets' first captain, the greatest first baseman in Mets history, one of the probably the greatest defensive players in the history of the game, the greatest defensive first baseman in the history of the game, a great leader on 2 teams, a great leader on the Mets. The Mets go nowhere without Keith. He taught the Mets how to win and how to carry themselves as professionals on the field. And what do they call him? They called him the Prince of Darkness because he had no person. He was so angry when he played. And if you watch him, very intense. Very, very intense. He took winning seriously, didn't like to lose. Very important player in terms of the Mets franchise. And he's great broadcasting. He's a bit of a goofball, And he's number 2 on my list. Now, number 1, well, that's pretty obvious. Number 1 is pretty obvious. Let's go back to him. And he's number 1 and by a long mile. And that's Tom Seaver. Nobody's even close. The 3-time Cy Young Award winner. Won 20 games, 5 times, I think. 4 times, 5 times. 3 Cy Young Awards, 1 World Series. Could have won a second World Series. 300-game winner. Over 3,000 strikeouts. Nothing not to love here. And he is the man. Nobody even close to Tom Seaver. Nobody's even close to where Tom Seaver was and is in terms of the Met franchise. So, now a couple of things. Hopefully we'll get some kind of resolution with the players and the owners soon. Hopefully by the end of this month, we'll get back to baseball. Major League Baseball starts on March 31st. At least the Mets it does. Where the hell are the Mets going to be on March 31st? Let me check the Mets schedule. Now, please like this video if you haven't already, and subscribe. You see the Mets schedule for this season. Where's my schedule? Okay, here we go. The Mets will be home on March 31st. That's a Thursday. They play a 3-game series against the Nationals. So Major League Baseball, I would assume that Sunday they're going to play the first game, probably on ESPN, I would think. So we're talking about you're going to need to get this negotiation moving pretty soon. Probably by the middle of February. Because you're going to want to get these guys in spring training. Now, what I read before, it doesn't seem like the sides are apart on anything. But there's a lot of distrust there. And this whole thing with Manfred, I haven't talked about this, and this thing with Ken Rosenthal got fired from MLB Network because he was critical of Rob Manfred. Terrible. Rob Manfred is not a fan of the fans. He's not a fan of the fans. He's not a fan of the game. He is an SJW of the major order. In that he will tell you one thing, but then everything that he does is different from his actions. I am not a big fan of his. Most fans do not like him. He was booted the World Series in 2020. He was booed in the World Series last year. He is bad for the game. Bad for the game. Um, Hopefully, we will get some kind of resolution to this, and this will not seep into the season. And there are a lot of players that have not decided where they're going to go. Couple of players to keep a note of with the Mets is Chris Bryant and Trevor Story. I've been on the Trevor Story thing for a while, really since this summer. And it's not picked up steam, but there's sort of been talked about here and there in some of the articles. The biggest reason the Mets will have a tough time signing him is not because he's not a good player and that they can put him at second, but it's because of this draft pick. And we don't know yet where Michael Conforto's going. If Michael Conforto goes to the Mariners, say, for instance, the Mets will get a draft pick from the Mariners. If the Mets lose Michael to some team that's bad that last year, they're not going to get a draft pick. They'll get something in like in the middle of the middle of the first or the second round. So that qualifying offer with Trevor Story is a big problem. At least with the Mets it is, and really most teams. I don't know what the Rockies are doing. The Rockies did a horrendous job running their team for the last 2 years. They didn't get much for Nolan Arenado. They did nothing to move Trevor Story. It didn't seem there was a lot of teams wanting to trade for him. So, got to be a little careful with him because his arm is shot. I don't think he's a shortstop anymore. If the Mets were to sign him, he'd be as a second baseman. And he might be more valuable as a second baseman at this point. The other player to keep an eye on, which is probably a more realistic one, is Chris Bryant. He could play third base. He could play second base. Now, what precludes the Mets from having him here is that is that. Hold on a second. I need a drink. Look. The thing about him is that he's gonna have to play third a lot, and I don't know if the Mets are gonna bring him in here and move Escobar to second. I don't think they're gonna do that. Also, another player to keep an eye on, and his name's been mentioned the last week or so, and I've talked about him, is Kyle Schwarber. It seems like Max Scherzer really likes him, and he's recommended him to the Mets. So that's another name, and you won't have to give up any draft pick. Now, I do know the Mets need another left-handed bat in the middle of the lineup, especially if they lose Conforto, and who knows what's going on with Robinson Cano. So he would be a good player to put here, but he's not a very high wins above replacement guy. He's more of a bomber in the middle of the lineup. He'll give some protection to Pete Alonso, and the Mets need protection for him because the middle of the lineup is a little thin right now. All right. And then there's Carlos Rodon, Charlie Rendon. Charlie in English to Spanish is Carlos. So Charles is out there, but he's left-handed, but he was hurt a good portion of last season with the White Sox. So let's have to be a little careful with him. But I know that his name has been popping up. I know the Japanese pitcher. What the hell is his name? Suzuki. Not Suzuki. The hell is his name? All right, sorry about that little technical glitch we had here. It sort of knocked off of my connection for a second, but yeah, the Mets should not go anywhere near Kikichi if they're lucky. They're smart. They've been pretty smart here. Hopefully, we'll find out who the Mets coaching staff is. They're still hammering this out with the bench coach, and sort of having a little bit of difficulty. But I'm not gonna do any videos on the bench coach now. If it's not gonna be Bob Valentine or Dave Wright, I really don't care. I don't think anyone else should either. Let me see if there's anything else to talk about before we go. Before we go. All right, I'm having all kinds of technical difficulties, but I want to thank you all for coming by. I don't want to be spacing out here. So I want to thank you all for coming by. Uh, keep your eye out for another live stream. Keep your eye out for some videos. I've not forgotten about the baseball hut too. We'll be doing stuff there at some point, and hopefully we'll get